Hi, New Zealand. I'm a middle-aged white guy. I'm a dad. I have my own business, and I'm probably a bit conservative. I'm in church most Sundays. In a few weeks, on the 17th of October, we're all going to have to make a choice about the future government for New Zealand. There's been a lot of talk about debt and who's going to look after New Zealand's debt levels the best. But I want to talk about another kind of debt that's not financial. About a year ago, my daughter was praying a blessing over food at the table for lunch, and she said, "Dear God, please do something about the climate change and the plastic that's killing all the seabirds and animals." And she was really serious and dedicated about it. But afterwards, I had a wee talk to her, and I said, "Well, you know what? God's actually empowered us with the ability to do something about those things. It's actually our responsibility." And, you know, the biggest debt that is facing not just us as New Zealanders, but all humanity, is the debt we've clocked up against the environment, taking out more than we're putting back, to the point that instead of looking decades ahead to see when we can repay that debt, like the financial debt our country has taken on to fight COVID-19, to repay the environmental debt we've created both here and globally, will take perhaps centuries to repay. And in the meantime, that's going to create serious implications for all life on Earth. And I don't know about you, but I remember in the beginning of the Bible, it talks about how God created all this wonderful life forms we have on Earth, and he said that it was good. So if we are destroying this at an unprecedented rate, simply because of our own greed, then we can't expect to have a future for us, no matter how nicely we pray over our meals and over our families. That got me thinking, like, yeah, sure, I'm a bit conservative, but the biggest threat and the biggest debt that we have to do something about is not money, because all the money in the world can't buy you food and can't buy you safety for your family if there is no food, because of droughts, because of storms, because of overpopulation. These are things that we need to address. It's not going to be easy, but even little old New Zealand can make a difference. I come from Marlborough, and here in Marlborough, a young man called Ernest Rutherford went to school in a little place called Havelock. Well, Rutherford subsequently became known for his work on nuclear physics and became the first in the world to split the atom. We also have, at that same little rural school, another rather famous person, William Pickering, who literally became a rocket scientist. And NASA, well, the precursor to NASA, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in the USA, would not have got their first satellite into orbit without his help. And then I also want to give credit to the Polynesian navigator Kupe. He, without map or compass, but using navigation by the stars and the currents, managed to discover Aotearoa, New Zealand, long before Abel Tasman or Captain Cook. We Kiwis solve tough problems, and we shouldn't think that we're too small to be able to find solutions to big issues like climate change, like pollution. We actually can do it, and we can lead the world. And I think it's that Kiwi number 8 wire attitude that we can find solutions when other people think things are too big to resolve. We can do it. So it's going to be hard. It's going to require everyone, and it's not a left or right solution. So I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but what I am going to tell you to do is to consider carefully and look at all the parties and put aside any personal biases that you may have. Like if you think you're conservative, you might have a tendency to vote a particular way, or if you think you're more liberal or progressive, you may think you have a particular way of voting. But I'd encourage you to put all that aside and actually look at the policies and who's going to make the most difference to making sure that not just New Zealanders and our kids and grandkids actually have a future, but also the rest of the world as well through our influence, though we're small. And we can have that influence. My daughter set me a challenge that day over a year ago, and I want to do something about it. I want her to be able to trust in me that I take seriously her concerns and that of her generation. It certainly is going to be hard, and it's going to require everyone to pull together. But New Zealand has done that before. I know my great-grandfather presided over Christchurch as mayor during the Second World War, when New Zealand faced an existential threat. And back then, people did know how to pull together. They shared stuff, they cooperated, they worked together. And I think we need to do it again. It's not townies versus farmers. Farmers will be some of the worst affected by climate change if nothing happens. And people who live in towns depend on food that is produced by agriculture. We're all dependent on each other, and we've got to work together. But we also need to look at what are going to be the best solutions. We can't bury our heads in the sand and say it's not happening. We can't do anything. If the only thing we want to do is build more roads and get the national financial debt down, but do not do anything about the debt we have run up against the environment, there will be no future for us. And in a way, it's a form of genocide And we know in the past that people who have been guilty of that have been tried for war crimes or crimes against humanity. And do we want our kids or grandkids to hold us guilty of that? I sure don't. And I hope no one else is so selfish that they would be prepared to put their own personal interests ahead of the interests of all humanity. Like I said, I am not telling you who to vote for. I am telling you to seriously look beyond the rhetoric of politicians, beyond your personal preconceptions and biases, and choose carefully. Because this isn't just the next 3 years that's at stake. This is the future of humanity. Thank you.